Okay, let's try this again.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good evening,
Welcome,
everyone.
Nick.
You made it
Good to
in.
see you.
I know it's a technology and I don't get along too well. So thanks everybody.
Nor do I.
Thanks for allowing me to come tonight. My name's Nick Bartolomeo. I'm the resource manager at Rock Creek Park. And I've been working, and my crew have been working, as well as our regional office has been working with DC Water for almost 11 years, I think, on this project. And we're very grateful to see it to come to fruition. We feel very strongly that it is needed and as soon as possible in order to address the issues that have chronically affected Soapstone, which is, small, high bacterial coliform levels, and just an enormous amount of stormwater that threatens the infrastructure that courses up and down that valley. And so we're very much looking forward to working with DC Water over the next 2.5 years, 2 years, and then into the future, after the construction is finished, to restore the valley. And we will be working with them every single day. We were meeting with them just recently just to actually walk the park and reduce the number of trees that will need to come down as part of this project. So we were very grateful for their time in the field. We have issued the permit that allows them to work on federal land. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be doing a very extensive restoration project with them. So if you have any questions about what's going on National Park Service property, aside from the technical end of things, which we'll leave to DC Water, don't ever hesitate to contact me. My contact information is up there on the screen.
Thanks, Nick. As Emmanuel stated, I will be giving the majority of the presentation, and thank you for the invitation. So we're just going to go through the project need and benefit. If you were on our last public meeting, we did a really deep dive into that need and benefit, specifically on the internal defects of the pipe. But today we're going to talk mostly about the stream and outfall design, the external defects that we are looking at repairing. And then where are we now? Nick already gave a little bit of where we are now through our current walk with MPS, being able to reduce the number of trees, meeting with DDOT for the same reason. But where are we now and what to expect in the future? So the project need and benefit. Again, we are, Soapstone Valley Park is 23 acres, mostly owned by the National Park Service. The sewer was put into place over 100 years ago. So in 2010, 2011, there was a condition assessment that was done. And there was also a 2013 report concerning the outfalls throughout the district, the stormwater outfalls. And there were 2 that were identified in Soapstone Valley Park. So when we talk about the project need, there was a need to rehabilitate 6,200 linear feet of sewer pipe, which we talked about once before, but repair those impaired stormwater outfalls. There's 2 of them highlighted in those orange dots on the map. And then what we call asset protection, and some of the public calls it stream restoration, but it's really asset protection. We have a number of our assets in 6 distinct locations that are exposed and threatened by the shear and velocity forces of Soapstone Creek that we need to make sure doesn't cause any damage and cause an overflow to occur. So as I said, we're going to talk about the 2 main topics tonight are the stream system asset protection as well as the outfall work that's going to be done. So there are 6 asset protection sites. We have 7 exposed pipes and 8 exposed manholes that are found within those 6 sites. And again, we are trying to design to protect those assets from utility scour risks or any large impact to like a manhole where it would collapse and cause an overflow of raw sewage. The sewer system asset protection was designed to the DOEE and DC Water design standards for the 15-year storm. But that was just for the storm. The structures were designed for 100-year shear and velocity impact with safety factors that range from 1.2 to 25. On average, we're just over 2, between 2 and 4.2. And all the manholes within the park, we need to make sure the rims were above that 100-year storm elevation. Now, we intentionally did not contain the 100-year storm. So you are going to see storm flow in those high events go into the valley of the park. This design was not to contain the 100-year storm, but to protect our assets from the shear and the velocities of those larger storm events.
Eric,
we also have...
Eric, excuse me, this is Marlene Berlin. Could you just go back and do a deeper explanation of what you mean by the shear and velocity with factors, safety ranging from 1.2 to 25, what that means?
Sure. So when we put our design into our model, so we used HEC-RAS model, we are looking at the velocity forces expected during a 100-year storm and the shear forces that a 100-year storm would make on that section of creek. So our HEC-RAS model goes from the headwaters all the way down to Broad Branch. But when we look at the storm and the velocities, we look at the shear, right? How the velocities of the water pushes against the structures, as well as direct velocity hits. So when we look at that, we put a safety factor. And that safety factor gives us assurance that we met the 100-year and then some. So it's slightly over-designed by putting a safety factor in to account for some nuances as the creek shifts from from design to construction.
I ask a quick question from Lois Forrester, who's the floodplain manager on staff, so to speak. I'm just joking. I was a floodplain manager career-wise at FEMA. So you put you put a factor of safety in here for velocity based on the model you used. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
For designing them, for protecting the manholes on the outside.
So yes, this is for the shear and velocity forces of the water. So that's what the HEC-RAS model would account for.
Right, exactly. Okay, so that you'll determine the amount and size of stone. I think that's what you're going to be using to protect the manholes, because there are several, the 8 or so, that are literally sitting there exposed to really getting impacted by some tree, major stone, or some other thing during a 100-year event.
Yeah, so the largest stone that we are bringing in for that protection is a 2.2-ton stone. So, since you've got some experience with floodplains and protection of assets, that 2.2-ton stone is fairly large, right? It is going to be able to withstand, right? So we don't want that stone to move. So when that 100-year velocity, that 100-year force hits that stone, we don't want that stone and that structure to move, because if we've got our asset, whether it's a manhole or a storm sewer, right? So we also have sewers that cross the creek that we want to make sure that we get that velocities, over those and protect those as well. But you are correct. Mostly that shear force is for those manholes. Great questions. Thank you. The other part of the puzzle here is the deteriorated outfall. So we have F117 and F140. F117 is by Albemarle.
Excuse me, Eric, could you back up? You are going to seal, it's my understanding you're going to seal all those 8 manholes in the floodplain, seal the top, so there's no gases, no holes for gases to come out, and no ability for floodwaters to go inside the manholes. Is that correct?
I need to check to see if we placed locking manholes, since all the manhole rims are above the 100-year flood elevation. I would need to go back to the detailed design and get back to you in terms of the what kind of manhole cover is being placed on those. We are rehabilitating the inside of the manhole as well as some of the outside of the manholes to just structurally give it a little bit more structural integrity and take care of any of our weepers and drippers and, you know, water that's already infiltrating in.
I just wanted to say, I got an email from DC Water, Emmanuel, and answering those questions. I believe those 8 manholes are going to be sealed with no holes no holes for the ability for floodwaters to go inside. So I just want to make that statement. I think it's accurate, but I'm not, DC Water should respond to that and confirm it. You can go on.
Thank you. You know, we have plenty of DC Water people on the call, so I'm sure somebody's taking note on that, and we'll get back to you and this group. I know we have a lot. I've got a lot of slides to get through, and I love the questions. I don't know if we want to wait for questions at the end. Let's try to hold
questions if we can.
Yeah, it just. Sorry. No, that's quite all right. I love questions. So we've got the 2 deteriorated outfalls, and as part of the district's NPDES program, we need to repair those. So F117 by Albemarle, and then F140 just off of Linnaean Avenue. So at both ends of Audubon Terrace, on the east end and on the west end. So we're going to talk about what the stream and outfall design entails. So first we need to talk about the goals, because it's not just DC Water's goals to protect those assets. We did work with National Park Service and DOE to ensure that the district goals were met. But as landowners, we also need to make sure that NPS's goals for our asset protection and what was happening at the outfalls were met. So Park Service came back and said, you know, we want you to minimize your tree impact and limit the footprint for your structures. They wanted to make sure that when we designed the revetments and the stream pieces to protect those assets, that we did it in the smallest footprint and only design what was necessary. The Department of Energy and Environment, again, they were looking at the outfalls mainly. So they wanted to make sure that those outfalls were stabilized. They have been reported since 2013 and earlier, needing to be repaired. So they wanted to make sure that DC Water had those on their list. But when they came out and they noticed, you know, the proximity of F117 to our Asset Protection Area 1 site, and we're going to get into that, they felt that there was a connectivity issue, and they wanted DC Water NPS to consider connecting those two to make a holistic and a single purposed solution for that area, and not just leave this small section between the two without touching it. So DC Water and NPS agreed to that. And so there's a small section of the stream that is being looked at that does not contribute directly to asset protection, but to satisfy mitigation needs from Park Service, as well as the request from DOE. So we're going to start at the top of the park at Albemarle, and we're going to work our way down. So the first is outfall 117. Everyone is very familiar with it if you've ever walked the park. There's a large crack down the center of the pipe. The pipe is undermined. There's an inoperable gate. And we've got this very big scour pool. The water comes out, we've scoured the stream around it, but we also have a failing slope coming off the trailhead that Park Service wanted us to address, as it has a connection back to that scour pool, back to that plunge pool. So the proposed repair here is to remove 33 feet of that pipe. So cut that pipe back almost to the face of the hill. Reinforce the remaining pipe, repair that pipe, replace the gate for safety so nobody can get in, and then add a cascade to dissipate that flow, take some of that energy out before it gets into that plunge pool, and stabilize the bank per the request of National Park Service with an imbricated rock wall. So the location right here at the top, I think I can have a pointer. At the top is the new head wall and gate. We're putting in a new cascade here. We have an imbricated rock wall here, an imbricated rock wall after the plunge pool. And then coming off that slope, we also have a cascade. Big terms, what do they all mean? So a cascade provides energy dispersion and scour protection below that pipe. So at the top of the trail, we're going to be installing a pipe under the trail so we can collect the water and discharge it in a point location into a cascade. And then that new F117 point would then have a cascade coming off of it for these purposes on the screen. So these are just two examples of what cascades look like. An imbricated rock wall, these are your large boulders that are stacked to protect either the bank, or if there is an asset behind that bank, to protect that asset from further shear erosion. And it is a linear application along those stream banks. So these are two good pictures. I've circled the same tree so you can see what the before, with that scour pre-construction, and what a imbricated rock wall would look like post-construction. So this is what we would see just at the toe of that plunge pool at F117. So how do we get there? So we have a main access off of Audubon Terrace, here highlighted into the green. This yellow area right here is F117 area, where the work will be done, where our plunge pool is. So we need to get our stream vehicles in there, get all those rocks, the concrete trucks, the crews that will be taking out that 33 linear feet of pipe, and being able to install those cascades and other structures safely. Just to get to this location, that would impact about 32 trees per the design. The heavy equipment access paths would be, to get there, would use hardwood mats over mulch with super silt fence. So this is silt fence with chain link fence with silt fencing to keep the road in place so those vehicles can drive over those. The roads are 16 feet wide to get those vehicles in. And we add tree protection, these wooden planks around the trees that are not being taken down, but within 3 or 4 feet of that access path. So here's another good look at what tree protection would be along those access paths. So what kind of equipment would be needed for not just F117, but all the other asset protection areas that we're going to be talking about? So we need excavators, track trucks, dump trucks. These rocks are big, 2.2 ton rocks. And we also have to be able to move those rocks. So we've got equipment that can pick up a rock. They've got like a little finger to it. So it's like a claw to pick up that rock and safely place it where we want it to be. So these are the types of equipment that we would be seeing for both the asset protection and outfall work. Moving on to stream design site 1. The stream has really widened here and is incised over time, exposing not just the pipes, but also the manholes and the encasement of our pipes. So at this location, we have the most exposed assets. We've got 3 exposed sanitary pipes, 2 of which you can see in this picture. There's a third directly behind that manhole with the green paint on it, and 2 exposed manholes, the one with the green paint. And there is one right behind it, directly behind it. It is a brick manhole that's about 6 or 7 feet in the air. The stream has a very large drop here. So we have an elevation change that we need to take care of. So here we're looking at about 450 linear feet of stream work. And we want to provide cover over those exposed sanitary pipes. So although these 2 pipes have a concrete encasement, the one behind it does not have a concrete encasement, but in all 3 of those scenarios, we want to make sure that we have sufficient cover over them. So if a big boulder, big tree comes, tumbling down, that they are protected, that there's enough cover on top of those. We'll be using different types of grade controls, and I will go through each type and where those locations would be. We would do manhole protection, manhole armoring. And again, we have got some bank stabilization. We have a couple set points. We've got Metro's stormwater coming out. We've got a retaining wall from one of the apartment complexes. So we've got a lot of constraints along with, you know, our assets that we need to work around in this location. So here is the upper stretches of asset protection area 1. You can kind of see right here at the very top, the end of the imbricated rock wall necessary for F117. So as I said, you know, we are connecting F117 design to the asset protection area 1 design. So we start with a riffle, come to a cross vein, a scour pool, a rock sill. We're going to get into all the details of what those are, but I wanted to show you the number of different technologies we're using to make up that grade and to protect those assets. Then we get to that first exposed asset, that manhole. So we've got manhole armoring around there, followed by another riffle, manhole armoring, a cascade. That is mainly to help make up grade. This is one of those areas where Park Service said, you really need to make this smaller. We've got some beech trees, a beech grove over here that we really want to protect. You can't be moving over here. You really need to find out a better way to change grade quickly. So we're putting in a cascade there. A scour pool for fish habitat and to help with that velocity coming off that cascade, and then some imbricated rock walls to protect those banks to make sure that flood water continues on before popping out of the stream. So here are some examples of riffles. The riffles are mainly to cover existing pipes that may be in the stream. And we will be salvaging a lot of the existing material in the stream and bringing that to the surface. We've got a few bars, rubble bars, just not too far from F117 that we'll be able to harvest some of that rock to bring it to this location, to bring some of that natural beauty that we all love in Soapstone back to the surface. We don't want to lose some of that. So these are just two good pictures showing during construction what a riffle would look like, and then after construction what one would look like and how it would be in the park. Now, remember, Soapstone is a forested park, so a lot of these pictures doesn't have a canopy over it. There will be a canopy over it in the final. I also talked about those rock sills. So these are large boulders at the head of these riffles to provide that grade control from that riffle, right? So we don't want to lose any of that material, so we want to keep that in place. So this is two good pictures during construction and post-construction. Those cross veins, again, large boulders now at the end of that riffle, again, providing that grade control. But it also helps promote deeper pools for both energy dispersion, right? Coming off that riffle, we got a lot of energy in that water that we're picking up, but it's also a great place for fish habitat and some other organisms that are coming back to Soapstone, and we want to make sure that they've got a safe place to be. We've got those in-stream cascades. So cascades, we talked about cascades earlier coming from the end of a pipe. We also have in-stream cascades. Again, these are large boulders, really at steeper slopes than a riffle, right? We've got that 3-foot elevation change that we need to do in a very short period. So a cascade's a great example to make up that grade control and protect the assets that are behind it. And it gives us the ability to tie into the existing stream bed downstream, where we don't have to keep rising the stream bed and try to catch grade. So again, two very nice pictures of in-stream cascades during construction, and then what does it look like a couple of years after construction. Those pools that I showed is really for energy dispersion and habitat, similar to the other scour pools that are there, but these are usually below cross veins that we have these pools, and promotes oxygen coming into the water again, but also a place for fish habitat and energy dispersion. We also talked about manhole armoring, those big rocks that would protect that asset from those shear velocity forces of those larger storm events. So here's an example of an existing exposed manhole before construction, and then right after construction, what that would look like. It looks like that imbricated rock wall a little bit, but these rocks are a little bit larger and has a different purpose, right? We want to protect that asset from being impacted and losing it. So how do we get to Audubon, to Asset Protection Site 1? So we're using that same access path off of Audubon Terrace that we did for F117. As you can see in that red zone, Site 1 is a very large site. It's 450 linear feet. We are connecting F117 area all the way down past those two assets, and then connecting that stream back to the floodplain using that cascade and pool structure. Here, we are looking at, during the design phase, 66 trees being impacted by Asset Protection Area 1. So I'm going to go very quickly through the other sites. You know, the existing conditions and the proposed solutions are very similar to what I just spoke of for both Asset Protection 1 and F117. When we get to some differences, I'll highlight those. Site 2, again, we've got an exposed manhole and an exposed pipe here. The difference between this site and the previous site is that we have a trail connection to add to the mix here. So we are looking at relocating the trail. I'm sorry, not relocating it. That's the next site. We need to connect the trail and make sure that we have a safe passage over our revetments, what we're putting into the stream. So again, cascades, a new trail crossing, manhole armoring. This is where that manhole's just becoming threatened and you start seeing the exterior of that manhole. We're having a rock sill there to protect that riffle before it goes into the cascade. So the water flow is coming from the left of the screen, up the screen, and leaving to the right of the screen. So again, it would be rock sill, riffle, and then cascade if you follow the flow of the water. The way that we are getting to Asset Protection Area 2, we're using that same path for F117 and for Site 1. However, instead of making a right once you make it into the park, we're going to make a left. And we're going to go into the park pretty close to the stream at this location, following the existing trail. Pop off the trail. We've got a nice little bowling alley where we don't have a lot of large trees to get to Asset Protection Site 2, which is in that red area. In this, we are looking at impacting 42 trees just to get this work done. Site 3, again, similar to sites 1 and 2. This also has a trail connection that we have to make, but this is the one that we have to actually relocate the trail. When we looked at the design and where we needed to put our stream work, we were not able to keep a safe passage where the trail was. So we worked with Park Service to relocate the trail. So the trail right now comes down at the bottom. So there will be a trail relocation, some skipping stones to get across this area before it reconnects to the existing trail. Here again, those rock sills, manhole armoring, riffles, cascades, scour pools for those fish, and an imbricated rock wall to protect that trail from losing any additional trail that's on that side of the creek. The way that we're going to be accessing Site 3, which is a larger site, you can see the LOD here, just a little bit larger than Site 2, would be off of 29th Street and Audubon Terrace. We'd be coming through the park in this small little access road with that heavy equipment, as well as those mulch mats that we'd be putting down in that green area to get to this site. For that, the design anticipates 19 trees being impacted. Stream design number 4, there's a lot going on in this picture because this site also shares a site with F140. So I'm going to first talk about the asset protection for Site 4, then talk about F-140 and how they're connected, because there's a relationship, right, between the two. So again, we've got the cascades, making sure that we've got safe crossage over the creek, rerouting this trail ever so slightly. Right now, the trail kind of juts away from the manhole. I think that's just because the trail there keeps moving and the rocks in the stream keep moving and everybody's trying to find a good place for their feet to stay dry. But we'll keep these stepping stones so people can keep dry feet during normal flow conditions. Manhole armoring, we've got a very exposed manhole here that is being threatened every storm that we see. Again, riffles, some rock spills, and that imbricated wall to protect that embankment from further scour failures. But right before that area is that outfall 140, those Linnaean step pools that DOE had installed. We are continuing those step pools. They stopped their project right before the MPS line. So we are picking up their design and completing that. But because of the way that the grade and the scour has occurred over time there, we felt that that continuing the step pools were not the best option. We actually worked with MPS and their group out in Denver to come up with a solution here to make sure that what we do here is going to last the test of time. So we all agreed that a cascade structure coming off those step pools was the most robust design for this. And it also allowed us to have a safe passage over the cascade to continue that trail. So that was another thing that we needed to design around. Was at the end, we still needed to have the public safely cross some of these stream protection or asset protection areas or stormwater protection areas. So we have another one of those cascades here. So the existing conditions of F-140, those failing step pools, I think if you've walked it in the last 3 or 4 years, you've noticed that those have failed. We are not taking care of the failure. DOE will be back to take care of that. We're just connecting downstream of that. Very large erosion in that channel. And there's such a concentrated flow that we continue to see that scouring around our assets and the park trail system itself. As I stated, we're looking at stabilizing the channel of that flow back to the creek by adding the step pools and the cascades. So we've looked at cascades before, what those pictures look like. This is what the step pools would look like, similar to what DOE put in, but we have a different design that we feel are going to last longer and connect better to a cascade structure. So that's what these look like. To access this dual area for F-140 and Asset Protection Site 4, we would be coming off of Audubon Terrace on the easternmost side of that through DDOT property. A portion of this is on DDOT land before we get on to MPS land for that asset protection site. So again, the asset protection site and the outfall area is in red, and the green is where those heavy equipment mats would be put down for those excavators and dump trucks that I showed you earlier. Site 5 is a simple design. It's just the manhole armoring. We have a threatened manhole at that location. Site 6, which is closer to Broad Branch, is also an exposed manhole that needs to be protected. And right as you get closer to the Italian Embassy residence and closer to Broad Branch, there's a third manhole and a pipe crossing here that we felt we needed to protect to make sure that we don't lose that manhole and lose any more land in that area. So here we're looking at a riffle along with a rock sill, and then a new stepping trail crossing in those two areas that right now are pretty hard to find a good safe rock to cross in those areas. The way that we would be getting to this area would be off of Broad Branch Road. So we would approach Asset Protection Area Site 6 first. That takes care of that riffle and that manhole protection. As we come up to manhole 363 for that second manhole in area 6. And then we would need a access road a little bit further upstream, up trail, to protect that one manhole at site 5. For this, we're anticipating about 64 trees being impacted in this area. So I know that was a lot of different structures, cascades, riffles, pools, fish habitat, all good stuff. But what happens after we're gone? What is the restoration going to look like? In the drawings, there was these hatched areas and called out some core matting and some live stakes. So after we're done putting in our revetments and the asset protection, we'll be stabilizing all that disturbed area with core matting, putting in about 1,200 live stakes along the stream banks, and then we will be replanting about 270 trees within the park, you know, as a mitigation to Park Service and to the public. This just shows a little bit of the vegetation progression from one of our other projects. Again, Soapstone is a forested stream, but those are harder pictures to take to give, you know, the difference of what you're going to see. So we felt that these pictures really showed, you know, what happens after stream restoration happens or asset protection happens. You know, the earth comes back to life, and it's a wonderful and beautiful thing to see. So where are we now? You know, the limits of disturbance for our work has been staked out. This contractor surveyor has been out there and placed stakes in the ground. We had that pre-construction walk with NPS, Nick, myself, the contractor, DC Water, others were there, and we were able to look at things, look at some of our paths, specifically our path to asset protection 2, to ensure that we could save some trees. There were some beaches of significance that Park Service asked the contractor if we could, you know, shift things a certain way, and we could. There was a wetland that we had to avoid and kind of skirt around, but we're able to take a few of those trees off the list. We also did a pre-construction walk with DDOT on March 1st. They tagged and measured all the trees to make sure that the trees that were slated to come down were of proper size for our permit, for which they were. So they cleared us for the trees that we needed to take down on their property.
Excuse me, Mr. Leinhardt. Can I interject just one question? I'm Deepa Mehta, ANC Commissioner for
Sure.
Regarding the trees, if you could share a little bit more detail, I think that is something that a lot of my constituents are calling about and wondering about. So the broad question is, how many trees are being slated for removal? And of that number, what subset qualifies heritage trees within the DC code definition of heritage trees?
So there are no heritage trees in Soapstone that are being slated to take down.
Oh, okay,
so
that's terrific.
So that's, you know, that's great. So historically, right, so back in 2010, the tree count was 800. I mean, it's a big number, right? And so through the EA process, that number came down to about 371. So we are permitted through Park Service for 371 trees. Our design is just over 250 trees. And the final count, I wish I had it for you tonight. I was pressuring everyone because I knew this question was going to come up. We are waiting for, there's, you know, as we were going through, the arborist was there, you know, ticking off the trees that are being saved. You know, there was like a swap out in one location, you know, we can save this, you know, 10-inch caliber tree if we take down these 2 4-inch caliber trees. So there was 1 or 2 swap outs, more more save than add, and the adds were just the small trees. So we're waiting on the contractor and their arborist to come back with the final list, as well as DDOT, because they also took their own list, and all parties, NPS, DDOT, DC Water, the engineers and contractor will make sure everyone's notes jive for that. And we will get that number to you and to the public once we have that final number.
Thank you. Do you know, just a follow up within that category? I'm very happy to hear, because then I will also be able to say to other folks that heritage trees will not come down as a part of this project. You know how many, order of magnitude, how many trees fall into the definition of the kind of special trees that, for example, if I, as a resident of Forest Hills, would want to take down in my own backyard, would have to pay a pretty hefty fine, a fee,
Sure.
Not a fine, it's not punitive, but a fee in order to take that tree down?
I don't have that number right now, but we can get you that number. It is not a very large number. I don't know if there's somebody else on the call that might have that number, but that is something easily we can get to you sometime after this call.
Great, thank you.
My presentation's almost over. So as most people know, the park is temporarily closed from March 7th through October 2023. I think the sign says October 3rd. So those signs just went up this week. And then, the contractor team, there was a request to ask, who was doing the work. So IPR, Inland Pipe Rehabilitation, is our prime contractor. Their primary responsibility is to oversee the work. They're the prime contractor, but they will be leading the lining, the rehabilitation of the interior of the pipe. They've got Triangle Contracting LLC as part of their team. They will be building the access roads along with Empire. Empire will be doing the tree clearing and site restoration and tree planting, but they'll also be chipping the trees on site for Triangle's use for those access roads. Triangle will also be doing the asset protection, all that stream work, as well as the outfall work. So they would be the contractor doing the majority of the work that I spoke of today. Right, so the access roads will be built by them with assistance from Empire, overseen by the general contractor, but the lion's share of the stream work will be done by Triangle. And with that, another one of my favorite photos, just because it's right here in Rockville, and I live in Silver Spring, and I know this park very well. So this is a park that had terrible sheer scour coming through the banks. That was restored, and the community has just fallen in love with this park and has really embraced the work that was done. So that was my presentation. I know that was a ton of information, and I probably went over my time allotment, but
it's okay. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
And so thank you.
I agree.
And I was remiss because I was so frazzled by my technical difficulties. I did not acknowledge that we have 3 commissioners on the call. David, Christelle, Stanwall, and Deepa. Thank you for being here too. And I know we had allocated 30 minutes to this presentation, but it's, I think we should just keep going, not all night, but obviously it could cut into whatever the committee was going to do.
Yeah,
and that's fine. So
I apologize. People were cutting slides from me last minute to bring me down to 30, and I just get so excited.
I thought it was very, very illuminating. And
perfect.
I don't know, Emmanuel, are there other presenters, or should we have some questions now for Eric?
Excuse me, this is Mark Babbitt, Acting
Mark.
Director of Engineering and Technology at DC Water. I want to thank Eric for a fantastic presentation, and I want to thank the committee for allowing us to be here, and we are here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And we do have people other than myself here to answer questions. I'm not just the only subject matter expert online. So if there's a question that I can't answer, we do have a team that might have an answer or be able to get you an answer. So.
I'm going to sort of interject with two observations. One is thank you for the presentation. It's more of a comment. That was super helpful. I think that the information on the trees, and I don't mean to be hyper focused on them, but that is a feature that a lot of people in the community are focused on in terms of this project. I'm going to suggest to whoever the right folks are on this call, Mr. Elledge, Mr. Briggs, whoever, that in something in the order of like a fact sheet, a one-pager with some simple bullet points be shared with the community, and the ANC is happy to help distribute this information. We can post it on our website, but we can also send it out to our list regarding the impact that this project will have on trees. And it can be in the form of things like statistics that you shared with us today, Eric, around how many are coming down, how many will be replaced, no heritage trees, how many special trees, and that I presumably the directive to Empire is to replace them with native species, what size, and some kind of commitment to restore the trees. I don't know what the right words are, but to restore them in a way that is going to feel like this is an improvement and not just sort of a net ravaging of the trees in Soapstone.
So there is a planting plan that we worked with National Park Service on in terms of tree placement. I know that they had concern about some social trails that had developed over time. So not only will trees be where we've disturbed like those access roads to replant in those areas, and those areas will be fenced off for protection of deer and from public for a little bit of time to give those trees a little bit of time to grow and sustain. But also there's a tree bank to make sure that those trees, if something happens to them, that they can be replaced. So Mark, did you want to talk to that?
Yeah, well, no, actually I want Will to talk to that. Oh. Will, can you let him know the number of replanting we're going to do and the funding that we are going to put into the conservatory?
So I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but it's a significant number that we're replanting. There's enough replanting going on that there's not actually enough everywhere where trees are being cut down and removed and trimmed. There will be new trees planted throughout that entire area. And in addition, DC Water is also contributing to a third-party fund that will fund the maintenance of that over a longer period of time.
Are you referring to Casey trees?
No. The name is escaping me. Nick or Annie.
Sure. Will, can I jump in?
Yeah,
please do, Nick.
Sure. So what DC Water will do is they'll pay into a fund that we set up with a partner of ours, the Conservation Fund, and they'll enter into an agreement with the NPS and the Conservation Fund to pay this money into this bank. Once that money is deposited, NPS will withdraw it in order for our invasive plant management teams to continually maintain that area for a period of up to 5 years after construction. So watering, invasive plant management, tree replacement, all of that will be included.
Okay, so that funding is specifically earmarked and dedicated to Soapstone and to this project and to any sort of restoration follow-up that has to be attended to post-project. Is that right?
Correct.
Got it. Correct. Thank you. Okay.
And we will definitely put together a one-pager with the stats about the trees. That's we'll get that put together, and give us a few weeks to get it put together and get it out. But we'll definitely do that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think it's just a one pager. I'm hoping that I mean, to be honest, I think it's in DC Water's interest to put this together sooner, because there's an ANC meeting a week from tonight. Yes, a week from tonight. And I believe that you'll be better positioned if you can answer these questions and really kind of share this stuff at that meeting.
Could I jump in here just to dovetail what Deepa has said, but focus more on another area, which is a schedule for the construction, because people are really interested in that, and how the stream restoration and the SIP will kind of interact, because those are two separate processes. Will the stream construction happen first, and then the SIP technology, the relining the pipe second, or will it be interspersed? And the time period of working in one acid area and all the acid areas. I mean, do you have a schedule yet, or of how you're going to be working this?
No, the contractor has to put together. I mean, there's just a lot of items to coordinate. You know, anytime you have a multi-million-dollar project, it takes a fair bit of time for them to lay that all out, figure out the equipment, the work hours, the manpower, that the equipment, the deliveries, and all that. They're working on it. As soon as we have it, we'll be sharing that information. I mean, what we can share.
And if I can add in, if I can add in, it's the difference, as we discussed with our contractor, of the existing pipes. Can they handle the reconstruction beforehand and then line them afterwards, or are they in such fragile positions that we have to line them first and then deal with our construction? And that is something our contractor has to evaluate, because if we're going to bring in 2-ton boulders and placing them over our assets, it's a discussion of whether the asset can take that, or do we need to reinforce it beforehand. And that, as all these discussions have been going on, is something we are still communicating with our contractor on. Can he come in and do the asset protection first, or does he need to protect the pipes first? Because the last thing we want is for him to be placing 2-ton boulders and break the sword.
And Marjorie, in the short term, I mean, we are looking at tree removal and tree trimming over the course of March, and access path construction over the course of the spring. The remainder of that work, as of today, we're just roughly saying summertime. We will share more details as we have them.
Okay. Do you have any sense of when you will know?
I would. When we will know what? Can I ask when we will know what?
Kind of the timing of and how you will structure the stream, you know, how you will coordinate the stream with the SIP process.
With probably in the next month or two. They're submitting their present pre-construction submittals. We've asked them to reverse from going upstream down to downstream up. As soon as they evaluate the delivery schedules and the ability to obtain the material and the ability to clear the trees and get through that, we will have that. As you know, we've had some issues with the trees. So as soon as that's cleared, they will know their schedule and we will share it with anyone who wants it.
Thank you very much.
May I jump in? I had my hand up. I don't know if anybody's calling on people.
All
It's hard
you.
to see. Yes, I
Right.
guess there was one other hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You're the one with the hand up.
All right.
Thank you for
Okay.
raising your hand.
Okay. Well, thank you, Eric, and everyone for that.
Very welcome.
Extremely helpful. So the numbers, back to the trees, the numbers that you have put on each area, each of the 6 areas, add up to about 235 trees.
That is correct.
Okay, so but that's not the actual number. You're gonna refine that. Is that correct?
So the 235 is what we placed in the design. So we're still waiting for, and there's additional trees in the design. So we have some work up on Albemarle. There's a few, 3 or 4 trees up there at the trailhead that are dying and dead and invasive that we've been asked to remove as part of, we're adding a triple catch basin up there to help with some of that stormwater coming off of 32nd Street and down to Albemarle. So we've got a couple trees that Park Service and DDOT, because of their invasiveness, has asked us to remove. So there's 3 or 4 trees there. So yeah, 235 is what we showed tonight. The number in the design was 254. That we are expecting to go down. Yes, Marjorie.
Okay, great. So my question is, so of that, the area around Albemarle at that outfall, the trailhead, so about 60, you said 66 or so trees are coming down there. That's about a quarter of all the trees. So that's a significant number of trees. The question is back to the design aspect of it. At one point, there was going to be an overlook, and I don't know if that's still part of the design, but who is actually designing this? Have you been working with a landscape designer or anyone who designs parks? Is that land at Albemarle near the trailhead? Is that going to be filled in where people have been, where land has eroded and there's that white barricade that was originally put up so people wouldn't fall down and
Sure. So
machines wouldn't be dumped down there?
Yeah. Will, do you want to talk about that area and how that has changed over time?
You know, as Marjorie was saying that, to be honest, I'm not sure I remember the detail on that from the design.
So yes, Marjorie, the original thought was there was going to be an overlook there, and that years ago when that slope had failed, both the ANC, DDOT had turned to DC Water and said, you guys are going to be here next year constructing Soapstone. Can you take care of this area as well? Well, we weren't there the next year after that, the next year after that. So DDOT came in and redid that sidewalk in that area, put in a curb. There's some weep holes, I think, in that curb to allow some of the storm water to flow out. And I know that both those barricades are still there. So that work had actually been taken out of this project because the need had changed. And the only thing that was kept into this project with DC Water was expanding that one catch basin, which is just, from our calculations, undersized for the build out in that area. So we're going to be putting a triplex catch basin there between the, if you're very familiar with this, between the telephone pole or the electrical pole and towards the park entrance will be a triple catch basin there. But those other elements had been taken care of prior to this project initiating final design.
Okay, so when you replace the trees, so I guess one reason I was asking about whether the land would be filled in there, whether you were going to be bringing in soil before planting trees, that's a significant number of trees coming down. And if you're putting in trees that are 2.5-inch caliber or 3-inch caliber, I'm not sure what they will be, that's going to be, that's a huge tree loss and canopy loss and noise pollution and air pollution and all of that being affected. So that's why I was asking about the design of that area.
No, so that the tree planting plan was, we did consult with landscapers who, as well as Park Services landscapers. Majority of those trees that are being replanted or taken down are in the belly of the park. There's only a few trees on Audubon Terrace that are coming down, and those were directed by DDOT. As I said, there's one very invasive tree that even when it comes down is going to be pretty difficult to
Eric,
compete.
Can I step in here and Nick,
of
I'd
course,
like you to listen to what I'm saying and join in. The Park Service requires us to put back inch by inch of tree removal. Now, can we replace a tree that's been growing for years? No, but for the 200 so trees we're going to take down, we're going to be replacing, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 plus paying in to the conservatory for Nick to have additional planting. So will it immediately replace the trees? No. But in the long run, we are putting back equal diameter of trees, which are more trees. And will it facilitate immediately? No. But in the long run, the park will be better off. And Nick, I'd like you to add into that for me, please.
Sure. So we have, horticulturalists and landscape architects, biologists, resource managers on park staff, and all of us with over 200 years of collective experience reviewed these plans. And so what DC Water will be expected to do is to restore the biomass in that area. And so we're going to come in with a native tree plantings, shrubs, forbs to get the area back to canopy level as soon as possible. And it's going to be a long process, of course. You're not going to grow a new canopy in 5 years, but this is an ambitious project. This is the first time the National Park Service has gone on a 5-year restoration schedule following a major project. So this is a first for us, but we want to ensure that the trees, the shrubs, and everything that we're going to be putting back there has a good chance of survival given the deer, given the invasives. So we're putting a lot of energy, effort, and funding into ensuring that the canopy is restored as soon as possible. But we have the expertise on staff, and we have been overseeing this for like 10 years, and we're ready to get this work started and get that restoration going.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Lois, I see you have a question.
Yes, actually related to all of this. Because it sounds like you'll be kind of blocking this off once everything is put in, the new landscape is put in, you'll be kind of cordoning it off so that we don't get social trails started. And that's one kind of question. I want to make sure of that. Plus, just to let you know, and I sent you and Emmanuel, Nick and Emmanuel, the question about the south side. A lot of people access the park from the south side, from our buildings, Van Ness North and Van Ness East, and people who roam through there or get lost in the park and come up through the south side. And I'm not talking about the formal entrance on the southwest corner off of Wyndham Place. I'm talking about the south side. So a couple things. Will you be doing anything during this process to maybe notify people or put a sign in some of the social trail areas not to go into the park? And also, will you be blocking off the southwest corner of the the formal trail access off of Wyndham Place? That's one question I would like to ask. I got a couple brief follow-ups. So could you clarify that point for me?
Peter, Peter Tanuba is on the line. He's our project manager for the construction phase. I know you were looking at that sign question. Are you? Have we come to a decision point on that? Are you able to share what the plan is? And
we will be on site with the contractor on Thursday to take a look at those locations that was suggested.
okay.
So we won't know until we visit the site.
So on Thursday we'll be on site. We'll take a look at it and we'll go from there.
I would like
the
to hear
input.
Nick, could you comment on this, please?
Sure. So we're aware of those entrances. I spoke to my staff today, and we'll be working with DC Water and coming up with the best plan to help prevent people from going in there. It's a difficult area to block off, and I doubt sincerely that we would be able to come up with anything in that area unless we were to fence it off 100%. That's going to keep people from coming down from that the area you mentioned, Lois. But we will oversee it with DC Water, and we'll do our best to ensure that people are aware that they shouldn't be going in there.
So that's from the private property, the so-called social trails. How about the formal entrance off of Wyndham Place? Will you put signs up and block those entrances?
Same thing. We'll look at it again and make sure that there's enough signage and fencing that people are well aware before they make a decision to go down there.
Okay. Because those social trails off of our private properties, Van Ness East, and there's just one off of Van Ness North. They're well known, and people come up or go down those trails. And after this is over, it would be nice to sort of be able to cut those off. I don't know how, but I'll just throw that out. I just have one last quick question. There is going to be a lot of work in the floodplain, Will. And it does look like you're bringing in a lot of heavy duty rocks, large rocks and so forth, that is potentially going to increase the base flood elevation. Do you have a feel for that yet? Because you gave me the top of the, I believe you gave me the top of the manhole cover relative to the BFE, and you said a lot of the tops will be above the BFE or freeboard, say 1 to 3 or 4 feet. Is that pre-construction or post-construction?
It's all post-construction. The base flood elevation will be changing. The 100-year flood elevation in the park will be changing. That's why we have that Clomar, and after construction we'll be doing the Lomar.
Right.
The letter for others who aren't as first, Lomar letter of map revision.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
Clomar
Okay.
as conditional.
So the Clomar indicated their BFEs were going to go up throughout the park.
It wasn't the entire park, and I also don't have off the top of my head what that increase was.
Okay.
If Eric or Annie, if the two of you happen to remember. But that's probably best information that we give to you after, just so that we can confirm.
Okay. I'd have to pull the report.
That's okay. I was just curious about that. And kind of a quick final note. I go to construction sites, and we have this problem here. Whenever we have construction, any construction site, you'll have these employees tossing out or eating on site with all kinds of wrappers and water bottles and so on and so forth. Well, somebody to make sure that this stuff gets cleaned up. I can't tell you how much trash I picked up in the park 2 weeks ago, just on my side, south side, and it gets pretty messy. And I know construction work brings it on, and so I really ask that there's effort made to make sure people pick up their wrappers and throw them in the proper location or recycle them. Thank you.
All right. So as the acting director, and construction is underneath me, and Peter is on the line. Yes, if that happens, we will react to our contractor. We will be there. We will have our inspectors on site. I understand that there is no need, and I've been in this business 30 years. I understand exactly what you mean. And we will do our best to make sure that it is not a, labor issue, having lunch under the tree and they leave trash everywhere. We will make sure it's taken care of.
I appreciate it. I'm
And
after our
Kevin is on the
contractor.
line. So Kevin is hearing this directly from you, and I'm sure that he's able to make that exact same commitment.
Yep, I am hearing it. It's definitely something that we always have a concern for, and we always make sure our contractors, myself, and then all of our subs do adhere to that, because we want to ensure that we're leaving it in the best conditions possible.
And
Thank you, Kevin.
just to put it out there for the public, while Kevin's here, if they don't and we have to pay to have someone come in and take care of it, I'll take it out of their contract.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you very, very much for that.
Yeah, thank you for everything. I think we're about to run out of time, and we have kept all you folks here on a Tuesday night well past your allotted half hour. I just had a quick question, because there seems to be some confusion about this. Is DC Water going to be presenting at the ANC meeting next week? I thought that was suggested somehow.
I personally am unaware of that.
Okay.
I thought that was the case, but I could be wrong. It's possible I made it up, since there are so many DC Water appearances. And
There's a lot going back and forth. We do have a air monitoring presentation that we are preparing to bring to the community about the CIPP process that we're going to do, and that we've met all of the environmental and regulatory requirements, but we are going to go above and beyond and provide a air monitoring process. And I know that our COO has required Will and I to put that presentation together. I do not know if she has promised that at a particular meeting, but we are in the process of putting that together.
Commissioner Mehta, I mean, it's sort of like DDOT. It's like an ANC 3F meeting, like DDOT or DC Water is like a meeting without sunshine. But in all, I guess, objectivity, I don't know if it makes sense, you know, if we want them to come and have an abbreviated presentation or information. I think the question about the timeline is really important. I know we've been focused on a certain part of this development of this project, but now that this sort of the pieces are coming together, I think we're going to need that timeline eventually. I don't know if maybe the next month would be a better time to come, but I'm open. It's
when you ask about timeline, what timeline are you looking for?
Well, I think the overall I think Marlene Berlin asked about it, and I think we've seen in earlier presentations, we've seen the timeline from start to finish. But if that's changed, I think, or it's going to be amended, and I think
and it has it with all that's been going on, as everyone knows. Charlie,
Mr. Babbitt, I understand that, but I think it's just, I think at least what's new to me is talking about the rocks coming in and out and how that may impact piping or not. That's something that I hadn't heard before, and maybe it's just me, but I think it's important, as Commissioner Mehta said and Marlene and others have said, it's important for the community to sort of know, this is a big project coming on, when is it going to start? One of the
I understand totally. Our issue is that as of right now, with all that's been going on, our schedule keeps changing. I mean, we were supposed to be cutting trees a month ago, and we haven't. We were supposed to build from the top at National Park down, and now we're going to build from down up. So for our contractor to get all of their subs in line, he's working on that. And I expect in the next few weeks, we will have that.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying is in the next few weeks, you'll have a schedule that you can give to the public or give to us so we can actually explain, what's going to happen.
Yes.
My expectation is that in a few weeks, we'll have something from the contractor. It will be multiple 11 by 17 pages with successor lines and predecessor lines and bars and probably a few hundred activities. We're happy to share it, but we'll probably want some time to create a version of it that's easier to digest. And we'll need a little bit of time to do that.
I appreciate that. And I in my screen, I can see Corey Levine over there. And I know she's got lots of experience with the Hearst Park and Pool. And not to agitate anybody, but I think just my short observation on that is whatever schedule you come up with, at least try to make sure it's reasonable and don't overpromise and just Mr. Babbitt, let me finish.
Sure.
I just come up with a schedule that's reasonable, that you can know that it's reasonably assured that's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, at least let us know as this project evolves, when things are changing. Because that's probably, one of the worst things you can do, or one can do, is put a schedule up and then start missing deadlines or missing milestones and mileposts. So let's, if you can get a schedule in a few weeks, maybe it makes sense, Commissioner Mehta and committee, for us to have to shoot for the April meeting, the ANC meeting, to, kind of present this.
Mark, the reason why, if this sounds like we are overly focused on these details or meddling, that is not the intention. The intention here is really, we're sort of like the first line. I am getting emails on a daily basis about trees, about deadline, start dates, about what's going into the air, and I don't have answers. And so when I suggested to you, Will, that a one-pager on the tree situation, that helps all of us, right? Like, we all then can get on the same page and we can understand what's going to happen. And that's true, Mark, also with the schedule. And we're not, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that you give us a timeline for what's happening every week over the next, 18 months. That's not what we're getting at. But to give you an example, I had a constituent who sent out an email to DC Water a couple of weeks ago asking a very basic question. This is a person who lives directly next to the entrance on Albemarle to the park, like the most adjacent property owner you can imagine, right? He asked a simple question about the load of disturbance because his property was staked out and stakes were on his property. It took 1 week to get an acknowledgement, just an acknowledgement. 2 emails in 1 week, 2 emails from me asking DC Water to answer this resident. Just give him an answer that says, I get this, I will call you, we're working this out, we'll be in touch. Took a week to get that. So what I'm suggesting is we can short circuit a lot of this if you take a step back and, address some of the tree stuff in a one-page fact sheet. Let us know as soon as you can when you can just give some basic milestones, like a start date, a couple months out, this will happen. And you can say all the sort of disclaimer language you need to about being stuck with those dates, but a start date's pretty important. When you have a sense of that, that would be helpful. The third thing I'm going to mention is that people want to know what permits are in place for this and what agencies are issuing those permits. And I don't know, like I just asked Mr. Ellich, separately, and I got something called a special use permit being issued by NPS. But that's also helpful. And, so that we understand that the land, the air, the water is being protected. There are kids playing, at that, Franklin Montessori, the head of that school is asking this question. So these are not in a vacuum. I just want to be clear that we have lots of other things to do. We're not interested in, in meddling in the business and the technical aspects of this project, but to the extent we're getting questions and it impacts people, this is why it matters.
I respect that. I'm well aware about the homeowner that his property line is under question. We're having our surveyors go out. One of the main things that I think we need to focus on is that we're here to be transparent. Tell us what you want to know, and we'll let you know. Right now, our contractor is scrambling. We issued a notice to proceed to a contractor with a particular method and a particular process that met our spec. But after community intervention and hearing what everyone has to say, we switched processes. We went from steam with the styrene resin to a water cured with non-styrene resin. our contractor needs time to figure out how to acquire that material. We don't know, is it available right now? What is the trucking process? What is the manufacturing process? So we need to, that's why we can't just give a schedule right now, because we switched our process 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe, I don't know.
Please.
So we need to evaluate the market. This material may or may not be available in a short period of time.
Is that the
It may
liner
be.
material? Are you referring to the liner material?
I'm referring to the resin material. The liner is typical.
What does
but
that
we
mean?
went
What's the
to
liner made
a
of?
non-styrene, non-VOC resin.
And what will it be made of?
I'm not a manufacturer. I can't address that.
Who knows that? What it will be made of?
The manufacturer. And we have received your questions, and we will be providing the cut sheets and safety data sheets for the material.
And Marjorie, I thought we had sent that information out to you. And anybody else who's interested in those safety data sheets. Mark Reed's making sure Emmanuel has that information. That'll be to you soon. And anyone else.
But my point is, our contractor is scrambling right now to redo his schedule. Though we've given him a notice to proceed, we've changed what he's doing. So we ask that you understand he needs some time to evaluate the market and give us a schedule. And he's doing that right now. And we should have it, Will, a week or two.
I think given the complexity, I think the contractor is going to need a few weeks. And then, to be honest, I'm not entirely optimistic we would have a simplified version ready to share at the April ANC meeting. We can aim for that. But I think we need to give the contractor a few weeks and then give DC Water a couple weeks to make a simplified version of it. So we're maybe right on the cusp of that April ANC meeting.
I mean, Will, I think that's okay. Just, again, I don't want to, we understand and certainly appreciate the pivot you've done on the STEAM process and all that. We really do. We, get that. Just, tell us what you can do when you can do it, and we'll work with that.
And as of right now, all we can really say is tree cutting and access paths over tree cutting over March and access paths over the spring, and the rest of the work starting in the CIPP in the summer. But absolutely, as soon as we have it, we'll share
David, exactly. Right now, it's all about getting in, clearing, getting our paths in, and we will share all the data that we have. And we are going to be doing a air monitoring presentation in the near future about how we're going above and beyond the requirements of any regulatory committee. And we will be sharing that air monitoring information with the community as it comes available.
And Commissioner Mehta, if I can go back to the permit question you had, there are a couple of slides in the last presentation that we gave that answer that question. But Emmanuel, a question for you. I don't know if we've gotten those slides uploaded or sent out to everybody in the public yet. So I don't know if they have access to that full list.
We did the slides from our public meeting. Those
yeah.
they've been emailed.
Okay, so it's I'm gonna try and find the slide number. On slides 34 and 35, we list specific permits, but that entire section, which is slides 29 through 35, it goes through the permitting process. A shortened version of the list is the LOMAR, CLOMAR, letter of map revision for the 100-year floodplain, the floodplain permit. Section 404, Section 401, the public space permit, building civil permit, those kinds of things. But the full list is in that presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I do think we should wrap it up and not keep all these people here any longer.
Well, I
sorry.
would like to take 1 second to thank our consultant, Eric, for a fantastic presentation and
Yes.
representing DC Water in a very professional way. Thank you, Eric.
You're really welcome, and I'd love to come back if there's any other questions. Or...
Yeah,
I'd like to get a
Thanks,
copy of your slides.
Yes, we can definitely
the slides and I'll have them posted. But so DC Water will not be dragged before the ANC next week. But is there somebody from my committee, the Parks and Watersheds Committee, who can present to the ANC? Because I won't be here next week. Any volunteers can email me, text me, call me, whatever. And then
I think Mark is volunteering right now, right, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm relaxed. I'm just kidding.
Poor man is not on the Parks and Watershed Committee.
If that is what you need, I will be there as acting director of engineering. Wherever you want me to be, I will be there.
I'm just kidding.
Anyway, we can worry about that later.
We can worry about that offline, Erica. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
We will
thank
worry
you.
about that offline, and also maybe the next. I thought this was incredibly useful. Maybe we should, if DC Water isn't sick of it all, have every couple months their presentation to the Parks and Watersheds.
If I can take 2 seconds to represent DC Water.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone has been to a stream area that has been rebuilt and relined. I'm not sure you'll understand what the water quality and stream quality and erosion resistance will be after we're done. Right now, you have deep cuts of dirt, you have erosion, you have exposed sores. It will be a totally different park. This is a, Will, $17 million investment?
$7 million, $7.8 million.
$7.8 million investment to rebuild the streams, protect the sewers, clean the sewers, and rebuild and protect the erosion that is going on. Nick, I saw you come on camera, so I just gotta ask.
Yeah, I just don't want people to think it's going to be a totally different park.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, I don't know that we want that.
Soapstone's going to be we're going to make some through this permitted work, we're going to make some real improvements that will, like Mark said, improve water quality and help stop erosion. And erosion is one of the major problems that we have because of the amount of stormwater that comes through Soapstone and other creeks that flow into Rock Creek. So, with this project, it will help address those issues. Yeah, and in closing too, you can always call me from the NPS side. I'm always around, and you can reach me on my cell phone. So feel free to just give a holler if anything comes up. You will see me and my colleague Bill Yeaman, who many of you know, will be out in the park almost every day. So we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your getting this together so quickly and taking your
We're here, and Will and mine information is available online if anyone wants to reach out to us.
Great.
Thank you very much, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.
Take care.
Eric, great job.
Thank you, guys.